and welcome back to Medical Compliance with Clarissa. I'm Clarissa Benfield, our Global Director and Business Line Leader for Medical and Laboratory Business here at Intertech. And today I am so thrilled to be joined by my guest from our Intertech Cough Bureau Insight, Nirav Darji. Nirav, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
Yes, happy to have you all the way from Germany joining in. So maybe, Nirav, to kick us off, you can let everybody know just a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into the medical testing and compliance space.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Nirav Darji. I am a sales manager for medical device and laboratory equipments. And it's been around 6 years. I'm working in tech industry. I have hands-on experience of testing medical device, and now I am focusing more on the sales and business development activity for medical devices. If I say in general, it's been around 22 years. I am in medical device field. But it's also my education and also working in industry, and still I have since 22 years I am seeing many medical devices. So whenever I visit conferences or fairs, I see new medical device which I never came across. So the medical device industry is growing fast, and there is always new technologies coming in, and there is always something to learn. So you never feel bored in this field. So I'm enjoying my work in medical device now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, your background from the testing side to working on a manufacturer side to now working in business development, right? You've really seen it all, right? All different sides of the medical device industry, and, what the burden is on a medical device manufacturer, but also what it takes from a regulatory side to get a product to market. So one of the topics I'm really excited to talk about today, this question comes up a lot, and, we see the discussion of medical devices versus laboratory devices versus what exactly is a piece of medical equipment versus what counts as a lab device, or we use this term med lab kind of generically. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, to help alleviate some of that confusion when we're looking at what defines a medical product versus what defines a laboratory product or device.
Exactly. So I also receive many questions from manufacturers, or mostly the startup companies, and they develop a product and they always ask me that if it is a medical product or laboratory products. So we cannot decide for the manufacturer, but there is definitions actually for medical products and laboratory products. If I say, for example, medical products are a device or instruments or equipment, they are designed for medical diagnosis or treatment or monitoring the patients. They are used directly for patient care or are subject to strict regulatory controls. And on other hand, the laboratory products are tools or instruments or equipment. They are used in laboratory settings for scientific research or experimentation or analysis of samples. They are primarily employed in non-clinical environment. The laboratory products, IVD device, for example, are intended by manufacturer to use in vitro examination for specimens, including blood or tissue samples derived from human body for purpose of providing information. So the medical products and laboratory products have different definitions, and laboratory products are used by scientists or researchers or the laboratory technicians, and medical products are used for diagnosis or treatment for the patients.
So when we look at this overall, are there other factors that we can use or that help people differentiate when you look at what's med and what's lab? Are there other things that we should be considering?
Yes, there are many factors. You can differentiate the medical products and laboratory products. The key factor is intended use of the product. So if the product is meant for patient care, diagnosis, or treatment, then it is considered as a medical product. And laboratory products are intended for research or analysis. Another factor is patient interaction. Medical products are often involved direct or indirect contact with patients or healthcare professionals. And also they are used in clinical healthcare settings. And laboratory products are typically used in controlled research environment or laboratories, for example. And they do not have, most of them, they do not have direct involvement with patient interaction. So the primary purpose of laboratory equipment is scientific examination and analysis. One other factor is who are the primary user of the product, for example. For medical device, the primary users are patient or healthcare professionals. And for measurement device, they are scientists or researchers or laboratory technicians. They are mostly working with the sample of the laboratory device. And of course, the patient safety is also relevant. So for the medical product, the primary focus is patient safety and health outcome. So there is a strict guideline for medical division to ensure the patient safety, and laboratory device must be also safe to use. Its primary focus is on generating accurate data and result for research and experiment purpose.
Yeah, so of course it's really important, right, when we're making these between a medical and laboratory device, because with these med devices, we are dealing with patients, clinicians, providers, right, people who are either receiving some type of treatment or using these. But are there other reasons why, as a device manufacturer, it's important to be able to distinguish between these two categories? Are there other things that this lends to?
Yeah, there is other reason. For example, patient safety. Medical products that directly impact patient health and safety. So the hard regulatory guidelines are in place to ensure the quality and performance, and regulatory compliance as well. Regulatory agencies like FDA in US or EU MDR in Europe have a specific guideline for medical products, while for laboratory products, have a different guideline, but relative to medical product, they are not as strict for laboratory equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really important to note, right? As a manufacturer, when you're looking at this, right, your regulatory pathway and your regulatory requirements are certainly driven by whether you're a medical device or whether you're a laboratory device. But you can't make that decision right on your own. You have to look at it in terms of what the intended uses of the product, and it's very clear, right, which pathway you need to follow, which then indicates which standards you need to test to, and then indicates, of course, which requirements you have to comply with from a documentation standpoint, right? So understanding and distinguishing if you're going down a medical devices path versus a laboratory devices path, which standard you have to apply, and then using that regulatory pathway, as you say, either with the FDA or with the notified bodies in Europe, or going even further outside of that, of course, to other markets. There will be certain things you have to do, depending on which path you choose.
Yeah.
Now, another question I think that comes up a lot, because sometimes we see products that are very borderline, right, or could maybe make the argument to go either way, or, you may have that kind of gray area. So do we see products that can be both medical and laboratory products that serve both purposes? Are there times when it's sometimes a medical device, sometimes a laboratory device?
Yes, indeed. So there are many products, maybe a single product can serve both medical and laboratory purpose, and they are often considered as a hybrid product, and their classification depends on intended use and the specific features. If I give an example, for example, incubators. The medical incubators are essential in clinical settings such as hospital for maintaining control and stable environment for premature infants or critically ill patients. And this incubator provides warm and sterile atmosphere, regulating temperature and humidity to control to support care and the development of newborns. So this is the incubator used for medical purpose. But on the other hand, there are also incubators which are used in laboratory settings. Incubators also widely used, for example, research laboratory for a variety of application. In laboratory, the incubators used to maintain precise and consistent temperature and humidity, considering condition for cell culture, microbiological grow, or various experiment. Researchers use incubator to create ideal condition to grow cell or to study the microorganism. And these incubators are actually considered as a laboratory incubators. There are also other examples, for example, PCR machine or centrifuge or microscope. Products belongs to both categories, but this also depends on the intended use of the medical product, and manufacturer can decide in which direction they want to certify their product.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, right now, even more, we're seeing large types of medical systems, right, or medical products that maybe you have a portion of the system that is used in a treatment or used in a patient area that might be to 60601, but you could have then external equipment that is supporting or support type products that are part of the system as a whole, but those would be tested to 61010. So we really, we look at, okay, what is the intended use? What is the standard require? Where are you going? And that can help make the determination into what do we test to, what do we deliver reports to, and kind of help show exactly what the best regulatory path is.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. definitely. I think it's an interesting place to be, right? Seeing all of these technologies and seeing, how much advancements we're having, not only in the medical space, but also in the laboratory space. And just, it's an exciting time to be part of this field. And I know that there's a lot of questions that come up. We see these a lot as, do I test a 61010? Do I test a 60601? What is my product? And so I think it's certainly good to have that conversation and understand that there are clear pathways, there are clear distinctions. And we can help, answer any of those questions for specifics, because sometimes you do get into a lot of a gray area, as you mentioned, right, with some of these crossover type products. The other thing that comes up a lot, and I'm so glad to have you on the call today to talk about this, because again, you've dealt with a lot of different types of manufacturers and been in a lot of different spaces, is the topic of essential performance, right? We talk a lot about essential performance specific to medical devices. It's something that I think has caused confusion for some people, similar to this idea of, is my device 60601? Is it 61010? Well, then you get into 60601 since we've moved to a risk-based standard. And now we see this requirement for understanding or determining your essential performance. So maybe just from your perspective, right, working in all of these different facets of the medical industry, what is essential performance? How would you define it? If someone were to ask you, hey, what's essential performance, right? How would you define that for somebody?
So yeah, that's a very important topic actually in medical device, or when someone is developing medical device. Essential performance is one of the important concept or necessary point they have to decide in parallel to when they develop medical device. Essential performance is a critical concept in the regulation of medical device, and it refers to performance characteristic of medical device that are necessary, its intended use safely and effectively during the life of the product. So essential performance is a fundamental consideration in ensuring that medical device function as intended, for example, the blood pressure monitor device. So the intention of blood pressure monitor device is to measure the blood pressure. So that is the essential performance of blood pressure monitor device. And essential performance is important for patient safety and effectiveness. Essential performance criteria are established to safeguard the patient's safety. Medical device must operate correctly and consistently to prevent harm of the patient. And without essential performance, medical device would not fulfill their intended medical purpose. For example, just inaccurate blood glucose monitor can lead to improper diabetic management. So they are very important aspect, essential performance.
Yeah. And I think one thing that, confuses people sometimes or comes up as a question is, okay, we hear this definition, right? This concept of essential performance. We also talk a lot about basic safety. So they're different, right? I mean, it's following a similar intention, but they're different, right? Essential performance versus what is basic safety.
Yes. So there are many manufacturers mix up actually the essential performance and basic safety. So it is the essential performance and basic safety are related concept in context of medical device regulation, but they are distinct meaningly and serve different purposes. So essential performance refer to the performance characteristic of medical device that are necessary to achieve its intended use safely and effectively. And these characteristics are vital for medical device to function as intended without failure, and the failure could result hazard to the patient. On other hand, the basic safety, if I talk, is about, for example, electrical safety or mechanical safety or protection against electrical shock to the patient or radiation. So these are the basic safety. So they are actually different concept, essential performance and basic safety.
Yeah, important things to consider, right, as you're working through all of your documentation, right, and putting everything together to get started. I think the other part of that then on the backside is, does everyone have essential performance, right? Does every medical device have essential performance? And is this a kind of one size fits all or one size fits most concept for medical devices? Is this everybody's going to have essential performance? I know there's been a lot of questions, again, when we introduced the risk-based standards, right? And we moved to this new kind of way of looking at medical devices and technology. But does this mean everyone has essential performance? Is it the same for everybody? Are there differentiators, in between the different types of technology and devices?
Yes, actually, all medical devices have essential performance because the medical device is developed to to diagnose or treatment to the patient. So there should be essential performance, and there is no one size fit concept for all medical devices. Now, each medical device have their own tailored or own essential performance, depends on intended use of the medical device. If I give example, for example, blood pressure monitor and surgical laser. The intended use of blood pressure monitor is to measure the systolic and diastolic blood pressure and heart rate. So the essential performance of blood pressure monitor would be measuring reliable, accurate blood pressure. And on the other hand, the surgical laser is used actually for cutting or vaporizing the tissue or coagulating the tissue. And the essential performance of surgical laser would be to have precise beam or power consistency or safety interlock or tissue interaction. So in this example, it is evident that the essential performance criteria for blood pressure monitor are distinct from the surgical laser. Therefore, the essential performance for each device is tailored to its specific function and context. As far as I know, or I have never come across one essential performance for each medical device. Now, each medical device has different intended use, and there should be a specific essential performance. Even when there is a blood pressure monitor, now different blood pressure monitor can be also different essential performance. There cannot be one essential performance for all types of blood pressure monitor. So it's a really device-specific essential performance.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note when we're looking at that too, that we see some of the particular standards, right? Some of the Part 2 standards even have requirements for essential performance because of the technology and intended use, right? So we see that even within the standards themselves, there are sometimes direct correlation and direct pointing to, okay, this should be the essential performance for this type of product or this type of device. So, I think we've moved in this direction where it really is, as we see this technology developing and as we see these amazing types of medical devices and products, it's, very specific to what your device is doing, right? And what your product type is that will help to drive that essential performance.
Yeah.
So what then happens if, we're a manufacturer, we're coming in, we're doing our testing, and we don't meet all of our essential performance criteria, right? How do you verify this, essential performance criteria as it's defined?
So actually, if the product does not meet the essential performance, it could lead to the hazard to the patient. For example, it could when the medical device does not meet this essential performance criteria, it can introduce various hazard risks that compromise the patient safety, effectiveness of medical treatment, and overall the quality of healthcare delivery. One hazard could be patient safety at risk. The patient may expose to unnecessary risk, including misdiagnosis or a delay on treatment or incorrect treatment due to inaccurate or unreliable device data. It could be also possible that the patient is inaccurately diagnosed. When the diagnostic device has not properly shown the result, the patient can diagnose improper, and that could lead to hazard to the patient. There could be also treatment error, patient in harm. There could be also therapeutic failure. Device intended for therapeutic purpose, like a pacemaker or implantable drug delivery system, may not function as needed, leading to therapeutic failure and negative patient outcome. For example, if the alarm does not work, alarm is also one of the essential performance and monitoring device that fail to meet essential performance criteria, which result in false alarm or missed critical event and contributing to alarm fatigue among the healthcare provider. Another aspect could be increase in healthcare cost. When the medical device measure inaccurate or unreliable data, that could lead to the repetition of tests or additional treatment to the patient or extended hospital stay that could lead to the cost to the patient. So there could be many hazards possible when the device does not measure or does not meet the essential performance criteria.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at it from our side, right, when we're doing testing, of course, we're looking at the essential performance very early on in the process, right? When we gather the documentation from the manufacturer, we want to make sure that you have a clearly identified essential performance. We can talk through that on the front end. We look at that both with safety and EMC, right? Because you have to show that it works before and after. So I think it's important things to consider, right? It's not just written down on a piece of paper, but it actually does impact, right, how you do your testing and making sure that the product does actually work after the testing has been completed and you go through the process.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
Well, Nirav, you've really helped to clear up some things I think that we see as really common questions and common, things that come back from the industry, looking at this definition between 60601 medical devices and 61010 laboratory devices, as well as the discussion of essential performance, which of course comes up all the time as just a common question, issue, concern amongst medical device manufacturers. And I think something as an industry, we're still refining, defining, helping to understand exactly what that question means and what someone's looking for. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to add? Anything that we missed in terms of either of those topics, looking at some of these common questions or common concerns that people have as it relates to defining med versus lab, or as it relates to essential performance?
No, actually, so far we have cleared the most of the topics and the definition between medical device and laboratory device, and we have explained detailed what essential performance is. So I guess this will be helpful to understand the both products and the essential performance of medical device. And one important question which we have discussed is the difference between essential performance and basic safety. This is always mostly mixed up, and I think now it is clear what are the difference between these two concepts. So yeah, everything is good. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, as always, if anyone has questions, they can reach out directly. We'd be happy to answer them or get you connected with the right people on our teams globally. So thanks, Nirav, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.